Good morning, ma'am. I am Debbie Galara Anna, and I am the group leader, and I will going to discuss about the utilitarianism. So it is the moral doctrine that asserts that we should always act as to promote the greatest possible version of good evil for everyone concerned. So it always answers the question, what makes a moral act right? It is a consequential approach to morality. So it means that dapat we should always use our moral reasoning in our daily lives. So for example, have you tried to watch the Inferno movie which is released in year 2016? So is it morally right to terminate a large number of people, or does it make sense to eliminate some of us so others can live? Because the earth can no longer sustain our daily needs. So of course it is not morally right. It is morally wrong. Because it requires you to count the everyone's interest and opinion equally. So it gives you a considerations to the well-being of everybody. So it means that the welfare or the well-being of many people should comes first. So before ka mag-decide, you should also seek the consideration or seek the opinion of others if agree sila sa imong na idea or dili. So, again, it is the greatest good for the greatest number and serve as the consequential approach to morality. So that means of utility principle. So this topic also has a vital role and a special place to the hearts of students na nagtaking up of politics, civic, and sociology because of its underlying modern welfare state. Who started the formulation of utilitarianism? So it is Jeremy Bentham and John Stewart. So Jeremy Bentham believed that the traditional morality was superstition and reden. Human beings are basically attracted to pleasure and aversion to pain, that we can formulate an enlightened morality for which the maximization of pleasure and minimization of pain provide a social goal. So what ought a person to do? It's simple. Now a person is ought to do or act as to maximize their pleasure or happiness and minimize the unhappiness and pain. So for example, if you're choosing a ice cream for yourself, you should always choose a flavor that will bring you pleasure. If you enjoy eating chocolate flavor, then you should choose chocolate flavor instead of vanilla flavor, bacana, or beef flavor, because it will gives you pleasure and instead of giving you displeasure. So therefore, Bentham established his basis for utilitarian moral principle that actions are right if they promote the greatest human welfare, wrong if they do not.
Intensity. The less intense the pressure of an action, the less valuable that action is. Duration. The duration of the pleasure caused by an act must also be taken into account when assessing the goodness of the act. Short bursts of pleasure or short-lasting pressure is viewed as less valuable than lasting pressure. Certainty. The certainty criteria refers to the probability of the pleasure resulting from the act. Basically, it means how likely a certain action will cause a particular action. Propinquity. The more distant the benefits, either space or time, the less weight we should give them in making our decision. It is important to note that for Mill there is no dispute between the conviction the utility should be the ultimate standard of value and the belief that certain social utilities are more important than others. For him, liberty is on top of the list of absolute and imperative social utilities. Betham and Bill offered different understanding of pleasure of happiness, but they did consider happiness as ultimate value. Contemporary philosophers who are utilitarian in your orientation, in contrast, often view as other than pleasure as having intrinsic value, power, beauty, and moral qualities. Equality, sameness, giving everyone the same thing. It only worth if everyone starts from the same place. Equity, fairness, access to the same opportunities. We must ensure equity before we can ensure equality. Roughly the same educational opportunities, about 40 students of widely differing abilities and capabilities may be placed in the same class at the same time, with the same instructor faced with such diversity. Instructor often end up aiming at the non-existed average class member. The three basic premises of OBIT. All students can learn and succeed, but not all in the same time or in the same way. Successful learning promotes even more successful learning. Schools and teacher control the conditions that determine whether or not students are successful at the school learning. My concern with the outcome-based education in relation with that we are now discussing is premises that students can learn and succeed, but not on the same day and on the same way. Another concept is what and whether students learn successfully is more important than when and how they learn something.
4 points of utilitarianism. First, utilitarians, in speaking of right and wrong act, refers to those over which we exercise control, those that are voluntary. This does not follow that we must have premeditated the actions. Second point is referring to the greatest possible ratio of good to evil. Utilitarians does not indicate an preference for emigrate or remote good. Third points to determine the possible ratio of good to evil for everyone. We must consider unhappiness or pain as well as happiness. 4 points, if you are choosing between actions, one of which you should prefer over the others, choose that the one produce the greatest happiness. Acts and rule of utilitarianism. Utilitarianism assert that the principles of utility should be applied to individual actions, practice, policies. It means that in the performance of the actions, we must ask ourselves that the one consequence of which particular act in these particular situations will be for all affected. Rule of utilitarianism state that the principles of utility should be applied primarily to rules actions and not to individual actions. It means that we should do that the required by the valid moral rules and valid action rules in defined should be lead to the greatest happiness if you everyone followed it. The rules that apply ambiguously to situations and will be yield the greatest social benefits if everyone were to abide by them. The such are rules, it argued, guard and against our temptations and consider ourselves special or conceptions case, and those help us avoid act of justice and fairness. While discussing Aquinas' natural law under the topics virtuous ethics, we already examined the concept of justice, legal and particular, commutative and distributive justice. To avoid an overlapping discussions, that current lesson will focus on justice as expediency, which is implicit in concept of utilitarianism, and the second part will highlight the idea of fairness. The utilitarians used to distribute justice start from the assumptions that everyone is equal period. The assumption of equality is one that can be easily identified with having been reared in a society erected on the premises that all men are created equal. In the US, for example, it is a widely believed that everyone is entitled to period, roughly the same kind of educations, that the success should be treated equally. The individual should be treated equally before the law, that everyone should have equal job opportunities and equal access to medical care, that everyone should be allowed to practice religion, speak freely, travel, and so on. Contemporary world rejects slavery and principle because it violates our beliefs that everyone is equal and insists that individuals should not be denied job opportunities and job related grounds such as a color, sex, religion, or age. We are usually offended by slavery, presumably because we believe that the one person is not necessarily better than another because of wealthy family, intelligence for some another criterion. This showed that we need not look far to see evidence that at least of theory, our society is built in commitment to egalitarianism. That the view of that all men and women are equal, just by virtues of being human. However, this comment I believe that strip of problems of both vertical and operational sort of problem that the one must be aware of in order to understand the theoretical utilitarianism theories of distributive of justice.
Good day, everyone. This report is about the problem choosing among talent, need, and goodness. Second is those in need, the difference between can't and want. And the last is merit, what a person deserves. The opening vignette raises some of the most perplexing issues in all of moral philosophy. It pits three interests, the talented, the needy, and the average, against one another and asks us to decide what is the fair way to divide our time and resources. Example, a school board has a budget and must decide whether to spend its money on average students. Those in need, the difference between can't and want. Some people times people have been instructed to care for those in need, the orphan and the widow. It's important to note that distinguishing between can't and want can sometimes be challenging, as there may be underlying convincing a person's ability or willingness to meet their needs. It's crucial to approach individuals in need with empathy and understanding, as their circumstances may be complex and multifaceted. And the last is merit, refers to the quality of worthiness of an individual's actions, achievements, or qualities that make them deserving of recognition, reward, or praise. It is based on the idea that individuals should be evaluated and rewarded based on their abilities, efforts, and contributions rather than external factors such as social status, wealth, or personal connections. When someone is said to have merit, it means they have demonstrated excellent skill or virtue in a particular area. These include academic achievements, professional accomplishments, moral character, or any other aspect where their actions or qualities stand out positively.
Good morning, Mamsol. Today I will tackle about my report, Merit, the relationship to being good. Carlins have three children, Rhoda, Dennis, and Christine. All children need parents' attention and affection. Carlin's daughter Rhoda is intelligent and talented and also plain in none. Dennis, who is hardworking but lacks Rhoda's abilities, and his school grades are mediocre. And the last one, Christine, is disabled, who can't walk. If Karen were to give her children attention based upon personality, likes and dislikes, she probably would give at least to Rhoda. Rhoda is after all a difficult child. Dennis on the other hand is earnest and Christine cannot help but elicit a strong sense of sympathy. If Collins were to give more attention to the one who could make the most of it would probably be Rhoda. After all, has untapped talent and intelligence, and so doing, Carling was penalizing Dennis since he would lose his mother's attention relative to his sister through no fault of his own. Christine also would suffer. Karen faces a dilemma in distributing attention among her children, balancing personal preferences and recognizing untapped potential, while Rhoda may have untapped talent. Fairness is crucial. Why should Dennis lose his mother's attention because Rhoda is indolent? At the same time, Rhoda may have a greater need for her mother's attention. She may have a greater psychological need than Dennis. Be more unsure of herself, more confused, more vulnerable. There is no way to know without understanding more the history and dynamics of the family life. It appears that each children has different merits and needs. Dennis, being a good person, may not require additional attention at the moment. Rhoda, with the anti-potential, might benefit from more attention. Meanwhile, Christine's needs make her deserving of the most attention. Balancing these aspects is crucial to ensure that addressing one child's needs doesn't inadvertently create new challenges for another. And, and the and the another story in Christian Bible, Luke 15:11. In this story, an older son leaves home upon receiving his share of his father's property. Through foolish spending and debauchery, he becomes penniless. Repenting his ways, he returns to his father's home, asking for forgiveness. His father gives him a ring, and a shoes, and slaughters a sheep on his behalf. The younger son, seeing this, becomes angry since he has never received such treatment from his father. The father answers by explaining that the younger son has always been with him, but the elder was a good dead but now is alive again. The parable stands for God's forgiveness of sinners, which indeed illustrates God's forgiveness, while it conveys a message of redemption and mercy. The moral interpretation raises questions about the treatment of those who remain steadfast. It's important to consider the different spiritual contexts and various perspectives on forgiveness and grace. And love and care are these fairness? We can say that the intensity of Carlin's love and care, it may not matter whether Carlin divides her time quality among her children. It is these values that may not last longer, give a deeper, she has still to make a decision, and she's the one is made absolute equality. Love and care, while essential elements in relationships, may not always align with the concept of fairness in a strict sense. Fairness typically involves equitable treatment based on principles or rules. Love and care, on the other hand, are often subjective and can vary based on personal connections, emotion, and individual needs. Striking a balance between expressing love and ensuring fair treatment can be a man's nuance challenge in relationship. That's all. Thank you.
Good day everyone, I am Zarmi Colaste and my topic is all about state and citizen taxation. But first, I'll define what is the state and citizen all about. The Philippine Constitution provides us the meaning of state. State as a community of persons occupying a defined territory, having a government and a freedom. It is according to Hector S. De Leon, 2002. State has four essential elements: the people, territory, government, and sovereignty. Citizenship, term denoting membership of a citizen in a political society. Citizenship is a concept that is from Western originated. Cynic doctrine, it is named after Diogenes of Sinope, Cynics, where it stated that living a simple and virtuous life free from material wealth and social convention. Citizen, a person having the title of citizenship who is legally recognized and enjoy full civil and political rights. And that's all about the state and citizen. And before Dara, I'll give an example. The Philippines is our state. And the individuals living in the Philippines are the citizens. And the citizenship of the individuals in the Philippines are called Filipino. And next is the theories. There are two theories, the political theory and the sociological theory. Political theory analyze and develop framework for understanding issues like governance, power, justice, and the role of the state in society. So basically, political theory examine ideas and concepts which human being created, while while the sociological theory, a set of ideas that seek to explain and understand the social world, human behavior, and relationship between individuals and society. So the sociological theory provides a structured way to analyze and interpret various aspects. 5. Historical view of citizen according to Robert Alejandro. First, a legal construction aimed at order. Second, as a productive member who always obeys the law. Third, as an active participant in a constant search of community. Fourth, a self-cuff between isolation and shared goals. And lastly, a self-divided between abstract freedom and concrete oppression. So the next report is all about taxation. So we all know what is taxation all about. Taxation, the process which government collect funds from individuals to finance public serve and government operation. So here are some ways on how we can contribute to the development and welfare of the state. First, by paying taxes willingly and promptly. Second, cooperating in its activities and projects. Third, conservation of natural resources. And fourth, preservation of peace and order. Fifth, patronizing local products and trades. And lastly, engaging in productive works. These issues or confusion of issues has been troubling. Let me start with three declarations. First, I used to be a tax lawyer. Second, for me, the obligation to pay tax can ultimately only be a legal and not a matter of moral. And lastly, I'm not in favor of complex, elaborate, or artificial tax avoidance. And that's all. Thank you.
Legalized confiscation is the purpose of the taxation is to finance the state indeed the origin of the tax in raising money to finance wars. So taxation is in effect of legalized confiscation of citizen money in order to pay for state activities. The obligation to pay tax must be a legal issue because the state's right to take it from us must be set in our law. If it's if it is legally due, the citizen is evading tax and is indeed wrong to keep it. If it is not legally due, it is not and never was the state owed money. The places for setting out the legal obligation to pay tax are in the legislation defining the scope and amount of charge, in the judgment of the court when the scope of any charge amount of allowance is challenged. What is moral obligation? When we talk about moral obligation is to pay one's fair share of tax. We compose a number of issues. It refers to the responsibility people had to do what is right or just. This includes doing what is considered to be a morally good, as well as avoiding what is considered to be morally wrong. What is fair share? Fair share is the idea that everyone should get their fair share of resources, opportunities, and rewards. This means that everyone should be treated equally and that everyone should have access to same resources. Moral obligation and fair share. First, there is a state decision about how much money to raise through taxation and what to spend that money on. Second is, however, the authority to collect money from the citizens through a system of taxation to raise the money to applied by the state for those moral purposes can only be expressed in legislation.
So tax avoidance. So let's proceed to the tax avoidance. What of aggressive tax avoidance? That no form of tax avoidance, however socially reprehensible, and it might be regarded by some is illegal. So it is legally way of saving taxes. So it is illegal way of decreasing the amount of taxes that a taxpayer has to pay, of course. So it is acceptable. Unlike the aggressive tax avoidance, it is legal by means of not paying taxes. So the best example of this is the loan payment. So excessive tax avoidance can cause problem to the government, especially to the developing countries like sa Pilipinas, because we need those tax revenue the most to fund the government expenditure. Para sa tunyog tarong, if I have a limited money to invest, I have to make choice that either pension contribution or investing in individual saving accounts. I might make that choice on the basis of my pension contribution that would attract a tax relief. So ato jud ko mapili sa kung asa ko maka-benepisyo. I have the choice to avoid tax avoidance in some of my income. So unconstructed my decision and action accordingly. So it is somehow acceptable and aggressive tax avoidance at the same time. But still, it is being determined by the judge and in accordance to the rule of law.
Complexity or conflicts is an informal term for what happens when someone develops a belief, often an exaggerated belief, that a particular situation is dangerous or embarrassing. It seemed to me the real argument on aggressive or artificial tax avoidance lies in the conflict structure, an arrangement that some taxpayer will adopt arranging their affairs solely in order to achieve commercial benefits. For example, if I make a pension contribution in the future, there is a personal benefits in having a pension income in the future, which will be taxable, I might add. My use of the tax relief is exactly the circumstance envisaged by the legislation, and I have not artificially rearranged my affair to find a convoluted way of claiming that relief. But as long as tax systems are complex, that perceived tax burden is too great. Complex legislation also requires conflict dropping with a consequences likelihood. If we don't want conflict tax avoidance, make sure the system simpler and clearer. If we don't like particular types of tax avoidance, legislate against them or remove the affording allowance and relief alternatively. Tax legislation can allow judicial discretion to strike down shame determined by the judge to be artificial where there is no substantive personal or commercial benefits. Be artificial where there is no substantive personal or commercial benefits, and they are intended only to avoid tax. So perhaps we can stop confusing what tax revenue are intended to be spent on what the legal authority to collect them. Financial support to one church. Commission on Higher Education would like us to focus on taxation as both a moral and legal obligation of citizens to the state. It is amazing to know that there are about 100 verses in the Bible about paying teaches. Purpose of the Catholic Church is to contribute financially to the support of the Church. This precept is presumed among the different churches for supporting financially one church. It is a part of being an active members of the particular church. Therefore, be something which bear a real relationship to our income as well to our essential financial commitment. Above all, it should be something which is thought out before we can come to mass to give one spare. Change on the spur of the moment is not fulfilling the obligation of giving a thought out and sacrificial